Malone. Was it how? I'd love to just talk a little bit about New York as you remember it back then, and why you chose the Bowery, and who were your neighbors, and what kind of community there was.
The Bowery had a lot of light. Had a lot of light in my loft. I had guys that I had to pull out of the doorway to get in. I knew there were artists working. I could see Robert Indiana, his studio, sort of catty corner to me. The Bowery was dirty. My mother didn't like it. But it was fine. It was good.
Did you feel safe?
Yeah.
The reason why abstract painting adds up to something is because you just do another one and another one. It's like almost keeping a diary, but it's an open diary. It's not like Aunt Galara's dates, you know. It's a real. The more you see, the more they build up and talk to each other. That's what I get from seeing a bunch of them. Because the ones I saw in Brooklyn were different too, weren't they?
Yeah.
Obviously the same ones. And
You saw some in Brooklyn. There were probably more over a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm.
I think Fran had different years.
Yeah, but it shrinks because it's still you, and you've been doing it since high school. So there was a real consistency. That's what I mean about the overall look.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't expect you to one day go Philip Guston and start drawing pillows and light bulbs. That's not. I don't see that happening. It wouldn't make any sense. Or even something as drastic as what Bryce reminds you, where he stopped doing the fields and then suddenly started to scribble.
That's drawing. That's scribble.
We can discuss that another time.
I know you don't like Twerko either.
No, I hate Twerko. No, not Twerko. No, Twombly. No,
Twombly. Oh, I'm sorry.
Poor Jack Twerko. No,
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I mean, I think what really strikes me about your work is your confidence and the mastery that you have. I mean, and we were talking about this work as almost a third act. And I want to know if you feel a difference in how you approach a painting than, say, when you were 32. And I mean, how do you go into the studio? Does the mastery come in play that you have more confidence in yourself as an artist?
Third Act is the name of that painting.
Which is a beautiful painting, isn't it?
Right where Rick is. I am in my third act. Knock on wood. What I'm thinking of with that title and that idea is that there are a few paintings in here that hardly have any paint on them. They're drawing. Somehow they worked out early in the stages, and now I'm just leaving them. I think when I was younger, I was much more driven to build them up and to use a lot of saturated color and just, sort of bombard with the paintings. And I think I still like strong paintings, but I also like soft paintings. So that's what I mean by the third act. And I'm much more confident in the studio.
What does it look like? If we were spying on you, do you go in the morning? Do you go in the afternoon? When do you
Go where?
To your studio. Is it when the muse strikes you?
I work in the afternoons. I mean, in Maine I can work in the morning and the afternoon. In New York there's too much going on. There's too much computer stuff and life stuff.
Do you find that what an artist needs to be in New York? Do you feel that someone who's not, has some time in New York is at a disadvantage?
Someone who has...
how much is New York part of your art life? Because you have this other escape, but it's important to be here, you think?
I think it's very rich to be here. I think the artists are here, the art is here. It's just very rich here. It's different in Maine. There are places to show and there are wonderful artists, but it's not New York. It's just...
My question is, what are your thoughts about how similar all the paintings have to be in a show.
Me or Karina? They don't have to be similar
Well, you know,
for me.
but, I mean, you know, some people feel like a show, it should be, you know, all of a piece, little variations on a subject. And I mean, to me, this doesn't seem like it's a group show, but it does seem like each of the pieces is its own piece, for sure.
This is true,
Yeah.
and this is the way it's gonna be.
And the other thing I did, it was a recall, in reaction to what you said about this learning to stop.
Yeah.
You may have heard this from the source, but one of the things Greenberg liked to say was, you need two people to paint a painting, the artist and someone to shoot it.
Does anyone?
I didn't read that.
Yes, right in the
So
middle
I
there.
have a question about, there's a lot of range within the work. And I guess my question is, what's driving that differentiation? Is it more about restlessness or more about curiosity?
Did everyone hear that? Was it more, what's driving the diversity in the work? Is it more about restlessness or curiosity?
It's not restlessness. So if I'm only given two choices, it's curiosity. But I like that. I like having the freedom to do, you know, whatever I want. You know, in my third act, I'm just gonna paint however I want.
We have a question out of the window.
Yeah, thank you for sharing so much about your process. I relate so much to sort of being in that nonverbal being space as you're making work. I'm curious if your work changed a lot when you left the city light-wise and sort of like textures and light, or if it's kept the same.
It's really not changed. I go back and forth, so I get to spend 5 months in Maine. And I work really well there because it's just conducive to working. But I cannot find a difference in the work. But true, sometimes I bring them back and forth, unfinished. But I don't see a difference. And since I only make photographs in Maine, there's no difference in photographs.
How often, I'm gonna take more questions, but I'm curious, when you're talking about the difference between Maine and New York. I mean, part of being a working artist or a working writer is getting out there and meeting people, making sure that there's eyes on your work. What do you do on that part of your New York life? Do you go see a lot of shows? Where do you go see shows?
In all these neighborhoods now.
Do you go to studio visits yourself?
Oh yeah, I love studio visits.
Yes, Tara.
Yeah, I'm want to pick up more on the quality of your lines and your gestures, as well as that, I guess this one, to me, feels like a little bit of an outlier, which I mean, I love them all, but in that your gestures are really sitting
On the
on the surface, whereas in so much of the, well, not all of them, but a
They're
lot
very
of your work and
integrated.
what I've been more familiar with in past shows, there's more of a layering and an integration and obscuring of a lot
Yeah.
of the line. And this one has, it has a calligraphic quality to it, and it's really, you know, again, the line, the gesture is very much on the surface. So is this kind of a, do you see this as a shift in direction, or that's how this one just wanted to be?
These were pretty early layers, and what I'm learning to do in my third act is to stop. And so there's not a lot of paint on there, and I did not cover up the drawing. So that's what it is. It's not a new direction, it's just learning when to stop, when to keep going. It's so basic, but it's not basic.
It's why I think it's one of the more challenging things to do,
They really are quite a variety. I mean, if you walked in and saw the back wall here, you might think it was a group show. I mean, there really is a range
Yeah.
that you go through. Even though you pretty much, the way you've described how you do them, they're more or less, there's no strategy, but there is a protocol that you go through. So you put a color down, and then you think about what that does, and you scrape it or do something else to it, and then one thing else to it. And you do follow that.
I start with drawing,
Yeah.
just sort of this asemic white writing kind of drawing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't look at it when I'm drawing, I'm looking at a piece of paper with another
Yeah.
sketch on it. And then I think about a ground or color, and it goes from there.
So this is scenic drawing, you mean like automatic drawing, almost like you're
Yeah.
not paying much attention. But
Yes.
but you are expecting it to come out like an overall pattern. Not a pattern that can be picked up on, but you're
Well, I
not
don't
drawing a
want
circle in
it
one
to,
corner,
but
a
it
triangle.
usually does.
Yeah.
Usually, like this one didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's food for thought, because there's no reason for me to keep making overall paintings that I can think of. I think they just ended up that way.
Yeah, sure, yeah, but that is what they are. I mean, it's, you see them and you think of the mid-century painters.
I would say that I see them as a connected group of work. I don't see them as, I mean, I'm not finding, like, you have a more seasoned eye, but like, to me, I feel like it's coming from the same person, the same, you know. And I'm curious as to, I've talked to Karina before about the light that's evident in your work. If you want to talk about the concept of light in your paintings.
Do you see light in them?
I think the light that's in them usually comes from inside them.
Mm-hmm.
Because the early layers are, they're drawn on linen or canvas, and they, when they start taking layers of paint, it's pretty thin. And so that means there's a background and a middle ground and a foreground. And usually the background has light, because it is physically lighter. But to me, light and dark and color and form and drawing are just all formal elements.
Now, when I think of the early abstract expressions, I think of that fast energy, getting it down on the canvas.
Pollock.
Yeah, Pollock. But I'm thinking about, with you, is it, and just in having our basic discussions over the months that we've known each other, which is about a year now, that you take your time, that these are not fast paintings. I'm wondering about if you could, are you working on more than one at a time? And can you tell us how long some of these
Yes.
paintings might have taken you?
Okay, I'm not an aggressive painter. I don't fling paint. I mean, in terms of Pollock, if you look at his ink drawings, and you will, they're beautiful. They're very sensitive. What else?
Well, how long are you working on them concurrently or one at a time until it's finished? And how long are they taking you?
Okay, so I usually work on a few at a time so that one or two of them will dry, because they're oil and they take a while to dry. How long they take me, like something that works in the beginning, like this painting or that green one near Pam called Drum Roll. That was probably just a day or two. Some of these paintings were worked on for over a year. Some of them came back after going out, coming back, looking awful, and got repainted.
Can you show us one that took about a year? Point to one of them.
This pink and blue one took a long time because I just had to pare it down. It had a lot of drawing, it had a lot of color, it just needed to be pared down. And this, I call it purple, but bluish painting over there went out, came back, got repainted, covered over with layers of purple and scratched out. So I don't mind, I like going back to work on paintings, gives them a second life.
I wanted to ask you, you know, I was reading some old articles where they called you a colorist. Would you agree with that? I mean, your sense of color is sublime to me, but how important is color to your work?
I wish it were more important, and that is something I always say I wish I did more of. When I was younger, I used very saturated, rich color, and now I think I get very distracted by the drawing, by the space, by the forms. So it's just an unknown right now. I mean, I think in total, there's enough color, but in individual pieces, there's just a few colors.
That's a question in the back there.
There's kind of an aleatory quality to the work, you know, that
What is it, aleatory?
all over.
Oh.
As you mentioned, Peter, as Peter mentioned. And I wonder if sound has any effect on the making of your work at all.
Sound.
Because, you know, living on the Bowery, very rich aleatory experience.
Yeah.
Living in Maine, sound trees always blowing in the wind. And are you affected by sound at all?
I don't know. I don't listen to music when I work, when I have to make decisions. I'm happy to listen to music when I'm doing grunt work, but no.
Do you work in silence? Which I think I saw Emily Berger in the back. There's so much music in your work. It's so interesting that, you know, abstraction is so different to me once you start exploring it as a non-artist. Is there another question? Yes.
I just want to say that I've been in Claire's studio in Maine, and she has a glass roof, and I was very struck with all the leaves that are falling down and permanently on the roof.
Because it's plastic.
It's plastic, I think it's glass, but there's a relationship with that imagery, not exactly, but there's such a strong feeling of nature in all of this work, and rearranged and in much more depth. But that atmosphere is really very important to the imagery of all of these.
Did you have anything you wanted to say?
Well, I was just gonna say that's a ridge skyline made out of Lexan, which is a plastic in your refrigerators, and over time, it gets duller, you know, everything sticks to it. So now it just has this beautiful gray, sort of twilight light, whereas it used to be bright and cast shadows. So, an advantage of time.
And I'm gonna make, does anyone wanna start off the audience? Jan?
You said when you drew first on the canvas, you were not looking at the canvas, you were looking at a piece of paper?
Yeah.
You called it automatic, would that be like Nicolaides method of like not, you look at the subject and you don't look?
Yeah, yeah, but I was
So-
just looking at another sketch or something in the
Right, so you
corner
did
of
a
it.
sketch first, or just had a notion?
It's just something laying around,
I see.
you know, a sketch, and it just gives me something to look at, to not look at my hand.
Right.
I wondered if you could say something about the space in your paintings and your photographs, and maybe contrast or compare.
Did everyone hear
I
that?
feel there's a big overlap in that, the feeling of layers and things in
Yeah.
front of each other.
The question was
Going
about
back.
space in your paintings and your photographs and how they contrast and they overlap.
In my paintings, because I start with drawing and because there's usually thin layers in the beginning, that really connotes a kind of background. And then it builds up. I mean, with a photograph, it's usually the same thing. I think that's how we see things. Like you go outside, you see, you can't, like a camera, focus on the the background, middle ground, and foreground, but the camera can. And you can in a painting.
It's not a question, I'm sorry.
Okay.
For me, the space feels like time. And I feel that in your photographs too.
It's hard to talk about that.
Yeah,
so I
but it's-
don't. But you're right.
I did.
Thank you. No, time is, it's
Really
a lot
important.
about time and
Yeah.
memory.
Yeah, well.
Time
That's what
spent,
happens.
I mean, the photographs literally take, like, the lens is open for 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours.
Moonlit,
Yeah.
time travel, back to that period of time, did you have a lack of confidence, or you were a pretty confident young woman? What would you tell yourself?
I was confident, kind of confident with my work, and I was kind of confident that I could work to make money to stay here. I would tell myself not to be so sort of hopeless about showing. I really didn't think I would ever, I mean, I was showing, but I never thought I'd be, you know, at 420, for instance, and I wasn't, but it's fine.
Why is it fine? I mean, do you feel that like, what state of mind are you in now as you go forward to, maybe it's the fourth act? You're like, what do you see? What do you see? What do you want to keep going? I mean, the nice thing about being a creative is that you can keep going.
Well, I want to keep doing my work. I would love to keep sharing my work, so showing it. I want to keep my friends. I want to see their work. You know, I like my peers. That's